You are listening to the Business Growth Toolkit, a series from The Standard Show, the podcast that brings you the stories behind the standards in collaboration with Innovate UK EDGE.
Hello, my name is Matthew Childs, and this is Business Growth Toolkit, a series from The Standard Show, developed in collaboration with Innovate UK EDGE. Innovate UK is the UK's innovation agency, and Innovate UK EDGE is a key part of agency's deep investment to help innovating businesses grow and scale, supporting them with tailored advice on becoming investment ready, internationalizing, and managing how they innovate. In this series, we're looking at the relationship between standards and some key business issues, with particular relevance for SMEs. This episode of the series is on innovation management, and our guide is Victoria Milne. With more than 20 years' experience in innovation, strategy, design, branding, advertising, and marketing, Victoria leads Tenshi Consulting, an innovation management consultancy. She's also a standards maker, developing standards in the area of design and innovation management, including the ISO 56000 series, international standards for innovation management. Before we hear my conversation with Victoria, a reminder that you can subscribe to The Standard Show wherever you get your podcasts. And you can find and follow us on social media too. All of the details are in the show notes. Hey Victoria, welcome to The Standard Show and our Business Growth Toolkit series.
Oh, thank you, Matthew. So nice to join you.
Now, Victoria, on your LinkedIn profile, you say, I love innovation and how it can improve life for the better. So why is that? Where does that enthusiasm come from?
I think partly I was born with it. I just love the idea of having a truly original idea. And I've always been fascinated by that. But also through my formative years as an industrial designer, and then on to kind of strategy and branding, marketing, and all of those sorts of skills. I just became so aware of the incredible innovations that are taking place and how they really do make our lives so much more pleasant. And really good design and really good innovation is human-centered. So they inherently improve the human condition.
So you've clearly developed a love for innovation then. So tell us about innovation management. What do we mean by this?
Well, like I said, I started out, like many people, with a real love for, ideas. But what really matters is if you can take that idea and take it through the process to produce a solution, to create some form of value, to actually see it on the shelves, or to see it being offered as a service, or improving a process, and that's where innovation management comes in. How do you take that R&D and that great invention and actually turn it into something that's either commercially viable or socially enabling or economically transformative, and that's the key point about innovation management. It's usually the piece that people think is the unsexy bit. But if you don't get that bit right, then you never really have anything to show for all of that work that you're putting into developing new ideas.
Now, clearly, innovation plays a really important role now in how organisations perform and produce their products and services. And I want to talk about particular standards. But before we get to those, what role can standards play generally for innovation management? Why do they matter?
Well, it's an interesting question because often when people hear the word standards and then they hear innovation, they might think that these two things, how can something so creative and different and innovative sit with something like standards, which is process orientated. But the great joy about standards is, and particularly management system standards, is that they help organizations to ask the right questions of themselves to create the right environment, that fertile environment, that fertile structure, that agile structure for innovation initiatives to take place, for people to actually be able to come together in a formalized way, develop those ideas into solutions, minimize the uncertainties, and deliver that end product, that value, to their stakeholders. So standards really enable that ability to realize value and realize that novel solution out there in the market.
People may be sort of thinking, well, hold on a second. Innovation, how does that fit with standardization? Surely they're sort of they're complete opposites there. How can we standardize innovation? How would you respond to that?
I love this question, and a lot of those global experts and national standards bodies from around the world asked exactly the same question when it was put to them to perhaps develop an innovation management system standard. And it took a while for people to kind of get their heads around what it could mean for innovation. And in order to get their heads around it, they really had to explore what innovation management was. And we tend to have this idea out there in popular culture that, there's these great innovators, have railed against the system, the bureaucratic, immovable structure within businesses. Sometimes they're referred to as the performance engine, because business has to be efficient and do the same thing well many, many times over. But that's not really what happens. When we start to actually look at innovation and how it comes about, it is more so about an environment that is conducive. So one where people feel relaxed enough to be able to share their ideas. They feel that there's a good structure in place where their ideas won't just be left to lie there and wilt. But actually that they can be taken forward, that there is an environment where the group comes together. And this is the really interesting part, is that those who think that you can't have standardization and innovation tend to be in that mindset that they can't work well together because there needs to be a certain amount of conflict and strife in order to become the great Elon Musks or Mark Zuckerbergs of this world. You need, it's a certain heroic character. But the evidence shows this collective that actually produces the genius of innovation. And that collective works best as a group with a degree of structure, support, and frameworks around the type of competencies they need to have, frameworks around what kind of innovation portfolio they're building out, what innovation initiatives, what kind of support and resources are available for this group to become successful. What is the kind of leadership mindset and strategy framework that will help to make this all happen? And so all of these components are actually what a management system standard is all about. And it creates this environment, it creates the garden with the fertilizer, the soil, the tools, the sun, the rain, the hose pipe, the good old hose pipe, and the gardener's skill and knowledge to produce incredible shows of innovation, and color and depth and diversity of output and real value. So they actually do work well, but we do have to change that mindset that somehow standards or standardization doesn't have a role to play in helping to deliver innovation and innovation management.
Well, talking then about standards delivering that innovation management, let's get to it then. The most relevant standards here. So what are we talking about? What are the most relevant standards for innovation management? And I'm particularly keen to understand the benefits to organisations, particularly SMEs, of using them. Where we start here?
Well, it's the ISO 56000 series. And it's been under development for about 10 to 15 years now. I always describe it like this to people who haven't perhaps heard of standards or the way that the terminology works. It's a bit like the Dewey Decimal System in a library. So each topic has a particular number, and that's the shelf that you will find these books on. And they're a little bit like self-help books. So you'll have a whole series of guidances under 56,000. So from 56,000, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, as they go and as they're written, they are kind of specialist self-help books. So they might be around IP, intellectual property management, within your innovation. It might be about how to handle partnerships. Maybe you're a small SME, maybe you're a startup and you're thinking about engaging with a multinational. What are the things you should consider there? So those self-help books all sit on the shelf there, 56,000. And the one that's really probably, I would almost describe as the encyclopedia at the moment, is 56,002. And that covers off all of the aspects that you need to consider as an organization when considering your innovation management.
So I'm just thinking, Victoria, as you were talking there, maybe, the different numbers there, 56,002, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, they maybe correspond to the different crops or things you're growing in the garden. Be a nice analogy there.
Absolutely. I love that. In fact, I think I'm going to change the analogy. It is more like packets of seeds. And so, you've got all of your favorites there. That's going to help you to win the Chelsea Flower Show for sure.
And tell us, and you mentioned there 56,002. Tell us about that one in particular. What's so important about that particular standard?
Part of the importance of 56,002 is its provenance. So it's been developed off the back of all of those other books on the shelf, all of those packets of seeds. It's been put together as the perfect gardener's mix. And what's amazing about its history is that you have over 180 individual experts in the Technical Committee 279 who have argued this out, who have developed this standard over years, and it's gone through rounds and rounds of peer review, a really in-depth peer review, line by line, word by word. And so what you have is a kind of there are too many analogies here today, but this is the triple distilled, version of what is best practice. And so you have a very, very smooth, fine end product that gives you exactly what you need to consider when it comes to innovation from the very beginning, which is, what is your innovation intent? And that seems like a very simple thing. Well, innovation intent is to innovate. Well, no. How? If you are in a traditional sector that has a whole lot of new challenges around sustainability and societal aspects as well as environmental aspects, your innovation intent needs to link with your vision as an organization and how you're going to perhaps answer some of those issues, how you're going to create more resiliency. Perhaps you're in a very volatile market. How are you going to address that? So your innovation intent is a very important question to understand and to be able to answer with a high degree of clarity. And so it starts there and it builds out into your innovation strategy, into then your innovation portfolio. And from there, you start to see it spread further into your actual, processes that you have within your innovation initiatives through to that. And this is an aspect about 56,002 that there's been some debate around. It is based foundationally on quality management. So 9001 has had significant amount of influence, which means that it comes with that continuous improvement Plan, Do, Check, Act. And there's been a lot of debate about how much of a nuance towards quality management we should have versus pure innovation management, and what's the right balance? How can we be assured of the quality of our innovation management? And that has meant that it's come out as a well-balanced document that does have this underpinning of continuous improvement, of Plan, Do, Check, Act, which comes from 9001, that ensures that keeps the system running optimally and evolving as required. Now, with innovation management, that's a lot faster. So you have to be an agile organization. You have to have systems thinking. You have to be willing to change your structure. And all of these requirements are considerations within 56002, which really, if you've worked through, is going to give you exactly what you need to do as an organization to become and remain innovative. And that is the exception out there in the world today.
Now, you described there quite beautifully the role there of 56,000 series for innovation management. I think there's another standard here that's worth discussing too, PAS 440 around responsible innovation. Tell us about that one.
Now, I love this one, and I'm going back to the garden analogy. I can hear everybody cringing out there as she does it, but PAS 440 is homegrown. It is a British Standards Institution homegrown standard that was developed with Innovate UK and answers to the need of what you need to consider, particularly if you're a startup, particularly if you're an SME, and you are at the cutting edge of your sector. It might be in genetics, genetically modified substances. And I say substances because this covers everything, from algae, to nectar, all aspects that may not be grown genetically modified, but are adapted within a lab and within that space. But you may be in that space. You might be innovating in nuclear. You might be innovating when it comes to medical innovations and life sciences. And PAS 440 really sets out very nicely in a lovely framework the kind of things that you need to consider, and not just for yourself and what you're doing, but what your suppliers are doing. Are they innovating responsibly? Are they supporting you in a responsible way with your groundbreaking innovation? You don't want to land up in a position where you have something that could revolutionize our dependence on palm oil, for example, and yet discover that one of your suppliers is considered in a very negative light by a whole host of global NGOs who are going to, legally challenge anything you develop with them. These sorts of things you really need to consider, because this can make or break you. So PAS 440 is about responsible innovation in these cutting edge sectors. It's actually worthwhile for anybody innovating in any way. But what it really does is it helps you to answer these questions before they're asked. Because so often, if the question is being asked publicly of you about your ethics, about your supply chain, about all sorts of aspects that it covers, and you haven't already got those answers, that is a death knell for you. So it's about considering these things early on. And what's lovely about it is it's free. PAS 440. You simply can go to the BSI website, you can Google it and download it. And I believe it's one of the highest ever downloaded guidances that the British Standards Institution has ever put out.
It is indeed, and that's details of that particular standard. You can find those in the show notes. Victoria, you talked there about the two main standards of 56,000 series and PAS 440. Any sort of honourable mentions about maybe some standards coming out of the future? What can we look out for?
Oh, this is the exciting bit. So, especially if you get excited by standards, and I'm afraid I'm one of them. But
who doesn't? Who doesn't get excited by standards?
But this is groundbreaking. So, in 2024, which is roughly in a year's time, Q1 2024, we will see the launch of 56,001. Now, what that means is when there's a 1, it's that first book on the bookshelf. And that first book is, in fact, the auditable standard. So all of those others are guidances. They're good advice, but no one's going to check if you actually do them or how you implement them. That gives you lots of considerations. But this one, if you want to be approved as an organization, that is 56,001 compliant, this is the standard that matters. And this is relatively groundbreaking, not just for an individual company, but on a national scale. The reason why is because if you consider anyone in procurement that is operating at a public sector level, at a national level, perhaps it's procurement internationally for large-scale projects. Wouldn't you want to know that the companies that you are procuring from have a certain standard of innovation, which means that although the contract is a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year contract, whatever they are able to produce on day one, as groundbreaking as it is, will continue to remain to be groundbreaking. Are you going to choose that company, or are you going to choose another company who you have no idea how well they innovate, or whether they even innovate at all? They just happen to have got lucky and they have a really good product today, but you have no sense of whether or not they're going to perform over time. Who are you going to choose? You're going to go with those organizations, those companies, those sectors that are 56,001 compliant. And those who aren't are going to lose out. Now, if we as UK companies don't have a level of innovation management by the beginning of 2024 that can qualify early in 2024, while Sweden and Japan have entire cohorts that they have been preparing, Spain, South America, they've been preparing for this for 5 years, Spain even longer. You now have serious competition. We now have potentially serious risk for UK companies after many of us have felt the blows of Brexit and what that's meant to our international trade, COVID and how that's affected our business. This will be the third knock if they're not prepared. And so nationally, we need to actually be very, very cognizant of the launch of 56,001, because it's either going to be a huge advantage for UK companies or potentially a huge disadvantage and risk, which I don't think many of them could take after the last few years we've had as a small business owner. I can attest to that. So 56,001 is one of those seminal pieces of standardization that is going to be just as influential, just as critical as 9001. And we need to be aware of it. We need to start preparing for it at the SME level, at the startup level, all the way through to having, national plans on how we're going to help and support UK businesses to be able to qualify to the standard.
So I'm just thinking, Victoria, as I'm listening to you speak there, and it's sort of the real sort of energy and enthusiasm about the role of innovation management standards. I just think if you're putting yourself in an SME's shoes here, what's the first thing an SME should do when thinking about implementing innovation management standards?
The first thing they should do, and especially if you're an SME owner, is get your hands on a copy of 56002 and go and have a read. It's not a heavy read. It's an easy read. You could do it over a weekend and just have a read because it will make you think. And so many times in small businesses, medium-sized businesses, we're so busy doing the doing. We struggle to find the time to do the strategy piece, the critical strategic thinking. And there is nothing more valuable than the questions that 56002 will ask you about your business and where you're going. And it starts with what I was speaking about earlier, that innovation intent. What is your innovation intent? Where are you going? One of the critical principles of 56,000 is future-focused leadership. So spend some time thinking about the future of your business. We've got to this point in time now where how we continue to go forward needs to be different. We all get that. I think we've learned that the hard way over the last few years. It's got to be different. We've got to be more agile. We've got to be more adaptable. How do we go about doing that? How do we go about creating value for our customers, creating value for our employees and ourselves and, our shareholders? And value and additional value, novel value, new value, increased value will come from innovation, will come from the uptake of management practices. And this is where we fall down. So in the UK, we have this productivity puzzle or this productivity long tail where looking into it, they've discovered the reason is we're not so good at picking up these new management practices, these new technologies. And the best way to have a step-by-step guide is 56,002, starting with your innovation intent, starting to think about, well, what's our innovation strategy? How should we resource this? What kind of, how are we going to measure if we're successful? I find it fascinating that it's not just an SME problem. It's in those multinationals that everybody kind of looks up to and goes, well, they seem to be getting it right. You go in there and you ask them, well, how can you tell? How do you assess if you're doing the right thing with your innovation? Well, somebody was really passionate about this idea. So we threw some money at it, and we throw money at things and we see what happens, see what sticks. There's no actual real assessment. There's no actually any way to really measure because it's not really understood what you should be measuring. Is it number of patents? Is it return on investment? Well, how long should we wait for that return on investment? If it's radical innovation, it might be 10 to 15 years away. All of these sorts of things. This, even at the very basic level, are questions that I would even argue a micro business should spend a weekend, a day, just asking yourself these questions, because it's going to then set your frame of mind in the right way to consider innovation. And that's what the first step really is all about.
So with using those standards then to really, for an organisation to ask themselves those critical questions and think about, okay, and what are we doing? Why are we doing it? How are we going to measure how successful we are? I'm just wondering then, as you talk that productivity puzzle, apart from if you are an SME or a large organisation, starting on that innovation management journey and using innovation management standards, apart from the organisation, who else benefits?
Well, this is the beauty. So we as a country benefit because the money that we are committing to investing in R&D, and those R&D grants, all of these policies that we're putting in place to support innovation, these standards actually help to inform how these bodies are beginning to evaluate the companies, the SMEs in most cases, who win grants. So this is one of those ding ding moments in this podcast. If you want to win a grant, read 56,002 because it's going to ask you the right questions. You're laughing. That's great. I love that.
No, not the other ding ding. I think that's very good. I like that.
Add it.
I should have a bell. I should have my bell.
But it not only helps us with how we spend our money as a country when we are investing in the R&D of SMEs, but it also helps venture capitalism. So being able to put money, private funds, into organizations and being able to evaluate those organizations and ensure that we actually have better quality innovation. If you think about things like, we can talk about, what's the development in batteries and what's happening. There are a number of countries with very similar technology, kind of leading the market. Now, you need to be a little bit better than those 3 or 4 other players if you're going to get the lion's share of that market. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is by having a whole ecosystem of suppliers, your entire supply chain, that speaks the same language about innovation, that is innovating, and that works well, has systems thinking in place that works well to be able to make the changes fast enough, be adaptable enough, and be comfortable in the type of innovation partnerships that you have in order to keep you ahead. So it doesn't just benefit, kind of the public purse or, the private investor in giving them a bit of peace of mind, but it actually supports entire, sector ecosystems in improving their outcomes and in improving competitiveness, which is kind of that gold standard that everybody's chasing. How can I be more competitive within my market? Also, not just within the commercial space that 56,002 applies. We've kind of been talking in that way about kind of value and, and commercial value and economic value and that sort of thing. But what 56,002 does as well is it helps, and particularly if you take in PAS 442, you put those two together. If you are interested in, the UN's SDGs and how to deliver on those, if you're interested in sustainability, it's not words that are going to help us to achieve the goals that we're setting. What's going to achieve a carbon neutrality, what's going to bring down global temperatures is going to be innovation. So even if you are in the charity sector, in the tertiary sector, in fact, I know of a university that has applied 56,000 to their how they coach and develop innovation and incubate innovation to huge success. Even in the academic space, it has relevance and it is incredibly useful to help to ensure that you are actually developing really good ideas, really good propositions, really good solutions that are going to really help people's lives. And that links us back to why I'm so passionate about innovation and ideas to begin with.
It does indeed. Now, you are a standards maker too. So what's been your own standards journey? How and when did it start for you, and where are you now?
Well, it was quite a few years ago. I kind of stumbled into it, and I landed up on the committee within BSI looking at design management for innovation. And so that is the committee that kind of reports into the technical committee 279 at the ISO. And through my involvement at BSI, I then moved into the ISO space. And I've been a part of helping to write in the early stages of 56007, which is also due to be published quite soon. This is a really lovely one of those self-help books. It's around ideas and opportunities. And how to identify the right opportunity spaces, the topics and areas that you should probe to potentially develop ideas from, and how that idea generation and idea management right at the front end, which a lot of people kind of think is the beginning and end of innovation management. Idea management sits there, 56007. So I was involved in that with a really lovely team, and subsequent to that have now become part of the main working group on 56001, where I represent the UK with some of my colleagues, and I head up one of the task groups, which is it linked in a sense to this podcast, in that it's about how we communicate globally some of the strategic value of the 56,000 series, and how we can align globally on some of those messages that are then taken through the national standards bodies and organizations, innovation management organizations around the world. So I'm quite actively involved in the ISO and the BSI, and I absolutely love it because it allows me to really influence what I personally believe, to be the most critical aspect to ensuring economic prosperity and resiliency for the UK. I believe that it's the way that we are going to see the types of innovation that are going to ensure that we don't have, an environmental apocalyptic future, but one that is regenerative, one that we get to experience a rate of change that we've seen increase over the last 100 years, that we're going to see continue to exponentially grow. And writing these standards is the foundation of being able to do that. So that's the real importance and value here. And that's why I do it. And that's why I love it. And I love the debate. Imagine.
Well, I was going to say, you clearly do. I can definitely hear how you love it. And you say you stumbled in, but obviously from a professional perspective, it's an incredibly rewarding and fulfilling. I just wonder what you would say to someone else sort of considering doing the same and getting involved in standards. What would you say? I
would say, do it. Just do it. Not only is it the incredible kind of quality of the members who sit around the table in committees with you, but it is at an ISO level, the international level of awareness of your sector, of what the key trends are, what's happening. And particularly with innovation management, we have a lot of academics that support the work that sit on these committees, as well as those who are in industry, as well as those who consult to the industry. And so it's a really broad mix. Regardless of kind of where your expertise comes from, there's a role for you to play within the standards writing and within, developing these standards that assure the outcomes for ourselves and the next generation.
Well, Victoria, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your insights and experiences on standards and innovation management.
Oh, thank you for having me.
For more information about the issues and standards raised in this episode, and for details of other episodes in the series, then check out the links in the show notes.
You have been listening to the Business Growth Toolkit, a series from The Standard Show. Subscribe to The Standard Show now, wherever you get your podcasts.
just heard a stripped media production.